Hey, good evening.
Hey, hi.
How you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you doing, Andrew?
Not too bad, not too bad. I just got off of a live with Amy and Jennifer and two other people, so I'm good. I'm good. I'm live right now on TikTok. I'm just waiting for a few people to pile in. Before we talk about the name, there's a woman that reached out to me. Right? She's a let me see her. She's a media and marketing niche consultant, and she wanted to tweak the name of the podcast. If if you're interested in hearing some of the names, it has inner voices. It's somewhat related to inner voices, but do you want to hear some of the names?
Yeah, let's go.
Okay, so reflections from within the mind of a juvenile offender, from crime to clarity, the journey of inner voices, understanding the echoes of a troubled past, exploring the shadows of a juvenile's mind, the path from darkness to self redemption, hearing the unheard, a juvenile's story of crime and growth, inside the mind, breaking down prison politics and self talk, analyzing infamous crimes through the eyes of experience, from lost youth to inner wisdom, a journey of reflection, the voice of transformation, life or lessons from a juvenile offender. Do any of those sound interesting to you?
Yeah, there's a man. Whoever thought that list up, it sounded about 90% of them were amazing. There was only a couple in there that I was kind of like, whatever. But most of them, man, all of them have meaning and are concise and reflect what our goals are. So, what did any stand out to you?
The first one stood out to me a lot, actually. Reflections from within the mind of a juvenile offender, because you will be reflecting a lot, and you are a juvenile offender who is now a grown man. So, what do you think about that one?
I like that. I like it. It reflects where we came from, and we're reflecting upon that. The fact that I was a child when I made my mistakes and stuff. That's very powerful. You don't think it's too long?
No, not at all. Not at all. One that's shorter is the path from darkness to self redemption. What do you think about that one?
Uh, yeah, that's yeah, I don't, yeah. I mean, it shows a definite error in thinking and stuff, and then seeking for self redemption. But I don't, I find objection with that because I don't personally. It's not about self redemption so much in what our goal is. I would like to focus on helping others, and I've made my peace. So maybe we could look at something else.
Okay, okay. So what I'll do, if it's okay with you, I'll send these to like 10 different people, and I'll have them vote on the names, and we can lock one down if that's okay with the most amount of votes.
Yeah, absolutely. Because let's see, from one, I wrote from crime to clarity. That was cool. The first one you wrote, you said talking about the juvenile thing, and there was about four or five others that just sounded amazing. So yeah, use your we'll definitely pull the people and see where they want to go with it, and we'll follow their lead.
Okay. All right. Cool. Cool. Well, I'm on TikTok live right now. So do you want to start out with introducing yourself? What?
It was pretty much a result of just negative self-talk and bad choices, and that's so. How we talk to ourselves matters, and that's something. I'm now almost 50 years old, and I've spent about 35 years in prison. In that 35 years, I've spent over 10 years in isolation, but I've read a lot of books, and I've focused on studying and learning everything I could because I was hungry to know why I made such bad choices and why I had the core beliefs that I had that led me down terrible paths, so that's why I'm here now. I feel that I can help people, and so welcome everyone. Let's have fun. Let's learn, explore, and grow together. And thank you all for being here.
So we originally came up with the name Inner Voices for this podcast, but we had a professional consult with us with some different names. So I'm going to have a few different people vote on the names and see what people like other than what we like, because it's not about us per se. It's about the public, what they like and what they're going to be consuming, which is this content. So can you talk about why you want to start a podcast with me and talk about your experiences as a juvenile offender and a juvenile unaliver?
Uh, yeah, absolutely. We let's see, we met each other years ago, and you and I have the same goal of making a difference in people's lives. The mistakes I made are horrific. I can't ever change that, but I can take what I've learned through my mistakes and help recognize patterns in other people that where maybe we can intervene or maybe change someone's path to where they don't make the same mistakes I made. And, if anything, we can be a supportive voice that'll help carry people through some tough times. And the reason I had come up with the idea Inner Voices, I think it's a reflection. I think in life, like whatever we do when we make mistakes or something, the way we talk to ourselves is super important because that's how we shape our lives. We take in our parents' voices telling us stuff, and then we echo those voices. And, we can either lift ourselves up or we could beat ourselves down. It's how we talk to ourselves, it's how we talk to others. And I think it all starts with our internal thoughts. And, when it comes to you have the resources, the ability, and the passion with working with healthcare and stuff to, you see a lot. And me being on this side, inside the walls, I've seen a lot. I've watched a lot of youth, a lot of people come and go and come back into this facility. And, it's like if I can reach out and I can help lend a hand to change someone's life to where they can see light and they can help themselves heal or correct course, then we've done something. Because there's a movie I once loved with Ashton Kutcher, The Butterfly Effect. The smallest ripple will change so much, and so whatever little difference we can make, hopefully that'll spread out into the world and make a difference.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I also wanted to start this with you because there's so many different infamous prisoners like yourself that I talk to that I always want to start a podcast with me, but usually it's for the wrong reasons. But you are a juvenile offender, and you're, like you said, you're almost 50 years old. You've been incarcerated 1 year more than I've been alive. I'm 33. You've been incarcerated for 34 years now, correct?
Yeah, since 1990.
Yeah, and I was born in 91, so that's a real trip just thinking about it. And I wanted to start this podcast with you to get not only your opinions and analysis on other juvenile offenders, infamous cases such as Columbine, Sandy Hook, in other cases, and when offenders were adults at that as well, but also on juvenile justice, because you are a juvenile offender at the end of the day, and you're like you said, you're almost in your 50s now, and I think it's important for people to know what goes on in the prison system, especially as a juvenile, because you were in the juvenile system before you turned 18, correct?
Yeah, I was in general population when I was 16.
Yeah, and I think that's really important for people to know that things like that happen because you weren't an adult. You were around other unalivers and other people that committed SA and violent crimes, and I just think it's pretty amazing that they can put a quote-unquote kid into general population with other adults, other predators and stuff like that. And I definitely am interested and excited to hear your insight into other people's, past and crimes that they commit and why you think they do what they do. Mental health, like you said, I'm in the healthcare system, a healthcare worker, and you're a healthcare worker too in prison. You work for the hospice program, and I've dabbled a little bit in hospice care, which I don't really care to do hospice because my stepmom and my grandma were a part of hospice, and it just kind of brings back bad memories. But I'm certainly excited to learn about your experiences and what you've learned with your hospice care and whatnot, and prison at that, because they can't leave at the end of the day. They're not surrounded by their family. You're their family at the end of the day when it comes to being surrounded by loved ones before they pass away comfortably.
Yeah, and I mean, this has been a really tough month for hospice. In the last 3 weeks, we've lost 3 hospice patients, and one I've known for many, many years, and he has been, it's it's personal. All we can do is give them comfort and be with them, and just, it takes a toll, but luckily we have in here we have our friends, and we lean on each other, and we help each other get through the day. So, but yeah, it's in here. It's like a micro society out there. It's just everything's focused.
Right. Yeah, it's pretty wild, and there's a lot of similarities and differences at that. With the free world, I guess you could say, in prison life. I mean, you guys got to wake up at the beginning of the day, and you got to go to bed at the end of the day, and you got to do what you got to do to survive. Just like out here, people struggle out here, whether it's paying bills or mental health or physical health, and in there, you guys got to struggle not only financially but emotionally, mentally, and all that. And there's so many differences that we have with you guys have, and a lot of people take things for granted at the end of the day. And people are like, well, I would never commit a crime, I would never do this or that, so I don't really think that I'm taking it for granted. But at the same time, there's people in there, whether it's family, friends, or even community, that commit atrocities or even crimes that they're not guilty of, that they get found guilty of at the end of the day. Because we know about wrongful convictions, and I'm sure we'll touch on that throughout the course of the podcast. Because I'm sure you've been involved with some people in there that have been in prison that don't deserve to be there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's funny. I had a friend, he, for years and years and years, he said he was innocent, and he worked in the courts, and I think after 10, 15 years, he finally overturned his case after some evidence came forth, and he was released, but he stayed true to himself, and he just kept fighting, and the truth came out. It's funny, you talk about emotions. I remember when I was 16, and I got to the prison, when I was in the fish tank, which is intake, that's when they did the last death penalty here in Wyoming. A man by the name Mark Hopkinson, and they passed. So that was kind of mysterious and stuff. And then I have a general population, and here I am as a 16-year-old serving life without parole, and all the other inmates around are able to buy tobacco and chew and stuff, and yet because I wasn't 18 yet, they wouldn't sell me this stuff, and I wasn't allowed to have it. So here I am serving life in prison, but I couldn't have the same, I pay the price like in a man and an adult, but I couldn't be afforded the same opportunity because of other laws. And so I was emotionally, that was something that I had a serious chip on my shoulder. I was pretty mad about that. And those are little things, like just weird things in society, like right now out there, something that so many people struggle with is just paying their bills, choosing between eating or being able to drive to work. Everyone has their tribulations in time.
Right, most definitely. I find it funny that you say that you were 16 and sentenced to life without the possibility of parole, and you couldn't buy tobacco. When there's people that can join the military, that can't buy alcohol or can't do certain things because they're not 21 yet, but they can go and die for their country, which has always been crazy to me. I've always thought, and that's just my opinion, that you should have to be 21 in order to join the military, or at least join the military in the sense of, go into combat, because your brain isn't developed until you're 23, 24, 25, something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Science has made so many breakthroughs that I think it's like you said, 24 or 25, the brain's still developing. And those benchmarks are very important. It just shows the stages of life. And most parents, they recognize when their child turns 2, they're about to go through the terrible twos, and when they're born, they're going to go through having to change diapers and stuff, and that's just a part of life. And they've established that many teenagers go through the wild stages, and most people listening to us probably know that they've probably done some wild things themselves, and hopefully they were able to grow out of it without too much loss. And I think the crime activity, there's actually an age crime curve that peaks around the age of 17, where basically most juveniles are delinquent, and then they mature out of that as they move up, get better educated or learn more about life, take on more responsibility, and eventually have families and move on. And it's just a part of life.
Right. Yeah, that cycle of life for sure. And I guess circling back to why we wanted to start the podcast, I have a podcast which if anybody's in here that's not familiar with it, it's called Unforbidden Truth Podcast. I interview people convicted of violent crimes, survivors/victims of violent crime, and professionals in the mental health and law enforcement field. And that's on all podcast platforms. And I've been doing this for about 7 years now. I've interviewed so many serial offenders, mass offenders, spree offenders. I talk to people every single day that are incarcerated for infamous crimes that have been in the headlines, have been in the news, some that some that aren't so high profile, but it's just crazy. I'm on the phone anywhere from 3 to 5 hours a day, and I know you are too, James, with so many different advocates and so many different people, family members, so on and so forth, that are advocating for your release and advocating for other juvenile justice reform and stuff like that. And it's just, I think it's interesting to have that conversation, and it's important to have that conversation too, because people that are in prison are still people at the end of the day. They're not just a number that's being warehoused, even though that's what it really is at the end of the day. If people don't really realize and get to know who these people are in prison, like yourself, it's been really interesting getting to know you as a person, and not as the quote unquote monster that's been portrayed in the headlines. You know what I mean? I've got to know you as a person. You know, what your average day is like, what you like to do, what you like to eat, what you like to talk about. You know, you talk about personal things. You're not one that likes to brag about what you've done, or dwell on the past. I know you're trying to get past that and advocate for other people in your position, which I think is amazing.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I appreciate the compliments, and I'm glad that you have afforded me the opportunity to spend this time with you, and that we can share this journey of putting our voices and our minds together and touching people's lives. So cool. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. So, do you want to talk about a few things, or do you want to talk about actually a few things, or quite a few things that we'll be talking about and covering throughout the podcast? I know we talked about, general contraband, mental health, covering different juvenile, not only juvenile, but adult offender cases, like I said, such as Sandy Hook, Columbine, so on and so forth. Is there anything else that you can think of that that we'll be talking about from your point of view and my point of view?
Yeah, I mean, anything in general that comes to people, if people have questions, or they would ask for advice on how to approach a problem, or one of the things that I would like to be able to conquer at some point is, I see a lot of people shame, the ability, when people have their own perception of themselves, and shame, I think, is a destroyer. Fear is a destroyer, and I think if we can help people have the courage to face those fears and realize, that it's not as bad as it seems, and if we can just be there for people in any capacity, I think that would be my goal.
Right, and I think it's important to talk about these subjects from your point of view, because not everybody's going to understand what it's like to be in prison, or what it's like to be in a prison yard at the age of 16 years old. I mean, when you're 16, you're just starting to find out who you are. You're just starting to date or play video games or whatever, and you were behind barbed wire in an institution where you can't escape, or you're not supposed to escape from. And we'll talk about that later on and throughout the podcast, because I know you did escape at one point in time, and I find that very interesting and fascinating as well. But you were placed in a place where people die in every single day, and it's just a place that's not supposed to be a happy place. But I mean, some people do make it their happy place. I know you're happy somewhat in prison. I know you make the best of it, and I know you're a happy-go-lucky guy. And I'm sure, unlike a lot of other people that you're incarcerated with, you actually spend your time, doing productive things, and as where other people might just sleep all day, or play chess, or play cards, or gossip, or whatever they do in prison from time to time.
Yeah, it's funny, the laws I've watched over the years growing up. I've been through all them stages. When I was 15, I'm sitting in county jail, and I couldn't be with other juveniles because I was on a capital crime, and yet I couldn't be with adults because I was a child. So I was in isolation, and the feds have decided that that's cruel and unusual. But I spent almost a year in isolation before I got to the prison, and then I was in the yard. And I was hungry to be around people that, we're social creatures. And then you talk about what people do, and it's like the list is so long. Like, I've never been to a pro sporting event. I've never had a driver's license. I've never been into a bar to buy alcohol. There's just, the list goes on and on and on of things that I have no concept of. But like you said, being in here, I've seen 30 people attack 15 people with weapons and just smoke to where you basically, all you can do is get your back against the wall. Because, I've always walked my own path. So, man, when things are going crazy and you have capstone everywhere and you have people screaming, you have blood everywhere. Yeah, there's, everything. I've definitely learned to be able to understand people and see and predict what they're going to do, because by understanding the people around me, I'm able to keep myself safe. And, in this environment, you definitely have to be able to survive and feel safe in whatever capacity you can.
Right. Yeah. And again, that's a lot like in the free world. I mean, if you live in a bad area or just in a good area at that, you have to survive on a day-to-day basis. Say you don't work as many hours as you should. You got to either hustle to get by or work extra hours or whatever. And same with prison. I mean, you got to do what you got to do to survive in prison, right? I mean, whether it's getting in trouble or burning other inmates or possibly putting your life in danger for, a pack of cigarettes or a week's worth of commissary or whatever. I mean, it happens everywhere. I hear stories all the time from guys and gals that get into drug debts or get into debts in general just because they can't they can't stand the taste of the state food, so they just got to get into debts or do what they got to do to survive. And I just think it's amazing that people have to do that, and I think it's so sad too at the same time.
Yeah, it's funny. It is interesting. I was watching this cute cartoon, and it illustrated the scenario of survival. Because in here, we're taught you have to respond a certain way. If you're called a punk or a bitch or whatever, you're expected to fight. But those are word attacks, and as a youngster, it's easy for people to buy into that junk of, oh, well, this so-and-so did this, so I must do this. And that's like, that's bull. You don't have to do that. You make your own choices no matter what. You have the ability to make your own choices. So, and I think in creativity, the cartoon I'm talking about, this girl was clowning on this other girl that she was kind of no good at nothing, or just like blah, blah, blah. And she didn't realize she was talking to a legend. And so the girl kind of just chuckles, and then she yawns. She goes, I'll let that slide. Just to acknowledge it and brush it off. And in here, the ability to do that, I can remember a specific instance. I was doing something. I was working on a project that was going to help everyone. But, everyone has their opinion. So I'm having this man in front of me tell me, like, in front of, 20 inmates. He's telling me I'm a punk for working for this and doing that and helping. And, it's like I let him voice himself. And then I'm like, you know what? I appreciate you expressing your opinion and stuff, but this will help everyone, and you'll see that in time. So thank you for sharing with me, but I'm going to do what I'm going to do. And, and it let it by that. And by me addressing it directly and honesty and stuff, because everyone's watching. And if you, granted, I understand the need to not be weak, because if you show weakness, then, man, the wolves will eat you. But if you stand yourself and you're honest and clever or creative, usually people can respect that. You didn't cower away from anything. And it's part of the survival you're talking about. But, that gets to creativity, and, there's always a choice. And, I hope in this podcast that we can help teach people that they always have a choice and they can make a difference, and how they envision where they want to go will help them get there through whatever circumstance they encounter.
Right. And this podcast will be very interactive too. I mean, anybody and everybody that wants to give feedback or ask questions, whatever, we'll definitely implement that into our monthly episode, because I plan on doing a Q&A probably once every 3 months, setting up a post on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, all the platforms, whether they want to ask me questions, you questions, because it's not every day you get to ask, you get to talk to somebody or indirectly talk to somebody who is convicted of something that you're convicted of, and actually is willing to speak about it and not only admits guilt, but admits wrongdoing and has remorse for it, and wants to not only move on with their life, but help others move on with their lives that's either been convicted of something like you have, or on the other side, survivors or victim family members. I know that you want to work with both sides of the spectrum, so to say.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm on board with all that. I'm very hopeful, and I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm excited too, and I'm hoping that we can launch this. Like I said, I want to record the first 5 episodes, so I'm not twiddling my thumbs like, oh crap, maybe he's locked down or there's a storm or the Wi-Fi's out or something like that, so we can have plenty of content to go off of. So in case something in case something does happen, unforeseen circumstances, because as I know and in prison, anything can happen. I mean, a storm can happen, especially in Wyoming where the wind is like a million miles an hour. I remember when I was driving through Wyoming, I was stuck between two semis, and I thought, well, this is it. I'm going to die here when the wind is like at least 50, 60 miles an hour blowing me around these two semis. So, anything can happen in prison. And it's just...
Yeah. Well, try ride 350 miles up under the axles of a semi. It hurts, and it's cold.
Oh, yeah, yeah. When you escaped, yeah, I can only imagine how scary that was. And you were probably thinking the whole time, this is probably it. I probably just escaped just to die, huh?
That did play a role. I had the goal of just dying free. I just wanted to be free. And, I remember no matter how bad it hurt, I just said, this is the price of freedom. It's amazing when you talk to yourself, it's like, this is what I got to get through to get to where I want to go. You can really endure some stuff. It's funny though, FYI, we were on lockdown till about 20 after 7 tonight because, my time, because of some unforeseen circumstance. I almost didn't make it out. I was like, oh man, my son's like, it's out of your control. You can't do nothing. But thankfully they let me out.
Well, that's good. That's good. And yeah, like we said, unforeseen circumstances. I mean, if you wouldn't have called, I would have figured you were on lockdown or you ran out of minutes or something like that. I mean, I know you're only allowed so many minutes a day to talk on the phone too. And that's another thing that people don't realize about prison is you can't make phone calls. Well, in California, you can make phone calls 24/7 and they're all free phone calls and you get one free video call a week. But other states, basically, you got to pay for phone calls. The other party's got to pay for phone calls, and it gets expensive too. I mean, people think that prisoners are just living large and, mooching off the state and whatnot, which I guess to an extent some are, but at the same time, it still costs money to survive in prison. You got to buy toiletries when you run out. You got to buy food if you don't want to, go hungry and all that. I mean, especially in third world countries. And I know a serial offender in Panama who has to buy his own toilet paper, has to buy his own deodorant. None of that is provided to him monthly. So if you don't have money, you're not going to smell good. You're not going to wipe your ass. You're not going to do anything like that. And that's crazy to think, but I mean, it's true.
We were shipped out to Virginia back in 2001, and it was a level 6 Supermax before it got shut down for failing to keep the inmates safe. But one of the things about it is you had to buy razors because you had to shave, and like if you didn't shave the same day you went out into rec, if they did open rec, they would look at you under a shotgun and ask you, when did you last shave? And if you said yesterday, they say, find yourself. Don't come out of there until you shave. And so you had to purchase your own razors to shave or you were heavily punished. It was just such a weird environment. You didn't come out of your cell unless you were under a gun or, there were usually dogs around. And, it was definitely an eye-opener because, we're fortunate in the United States that to be the country that we are, because the places you talk about like Panama, and I've heard about Mexico, if you don't have a source of money, you will starve to death.
Right, and if you don't,
1 minute remaining.
And if you don't have a source of money, you can potentially be extorted or pimped out or whatever if you're a weaker inmate or, whatever it may be, which is really sad.
Oh yeah, that's definitely a thing. They try to protect the inmates, but yeah, that's a touchy dynamic. It boils down to people come to prison because they create victims, and so people are in here swimming in the shark tank. People are in at the same time. People are trying to learn from their mistakes, and other people thrive on it. And some people are just come to prison. They were saved because they got nothing better. So there's a vast. Well, they're going to cut us off. Is there anything last questions or anything you'd like to close with before I need to go?
No, I think that's it. You can go ahead and give me a call tomorrow night if you want, and then we can catch up and we can talk more about this and get the ball rolling, so to speak.
All right. Well, thank you, Andrew. It's been
All right, that was juvenile mass killer James Wiley, and yeah, that's our podcast idea. We'll be launching it mid to late September. So all of you guys that are listening or tuning in, feel free to follow on here, TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, all that. So thank you guys for tuning in, and hope to see you soon. Peace.